Into the tempest, a furious blizzard clawed at the world, transforming the night into an arena of ice and despair. In the midst of this chaotic fury, Rory stumbled forward as if treading the thin line between life and oblivion. Each breath was ragged and desperate, a struggle against the relentless bite of the frozen wind. The sky unleashed a relentless barrage of icy rain, each droplet a frozen shard that cut across her cheeks, carving memories of past torments into her skin. With every step through the blinding white tempest, the world around her disintegrated into swirling snow and ceaseless agony, leaving her isolated in a landscape that was as merciless as it was mysterious. The harsh winds stripped away the warmth of her threadbare cloak, exposing her to the raw brutality of nature. It was as though the storm itself sought to erase all remnants of her past, to obliterate her very identity. Yet, amid the howling chaos, something within her stirred, a fierce and defiant ember, a silver flame long subdued by the weight of isolation and rejection. In that frozen moment, fate and resilience collided. Rory no longer had the luxury to remember the miseries that had driven her to this desolate expanse. She only knew the urgent, primal need to survive, to ignite the dormant spark waiting deep within her. As the world around her blurred into an endless sea of white and desolation, the tempest seemed to echo the clamor of her inner turmoil. Every wind-whipped gust whispered secrets of a forgotten past, stoking a yearning for liberation from a life marred by rejection and solitude. Her heart pounded like a tribal drum, each beat carrying the painful weight of memories and the fierce hope of a transformative tomorrow. Each stride became a battle against both the external storm and the internal tempest of despair and longing that raged within her soul. In the midst of this brutal confluence of fury and desperation, the elements themselves seemed to conspire to forge a crucible, a trial by ice and memory. The relentless barrage of bitter winds and piercing cold was more than a natural disaster. It was a merciless judge, condemning all who dared to defy fate. And yet, within this maelstrom, Rory could sense a tantalizing promise, a destiny not defined by her scars, but by the unyielding courage that ignited like liquid silver deep in her veins. Her senses were overwhelmed, the taste of metal on her tongue, the stinging chill that invaded her every pore, and the endless gray of a sky that seemed determined to smother all hope. But even as the bleakness threatened to engulf her, the small, persistent flame within her began to flicker. It danced in defiance against the overpowering bleakness, casting fleeting illuminations on the frozen ground beneath her trembling steps. This was no ordinary fire. It was the silver essence of her untamed spirit, a silent testament to the strength that had been suppressed for far too long. Each moment in that storm was both a torment and a liberation. The icy rain and savage wind were harsh reminders of her vulnerability, yet they also mirrored the relentless force of her inner will. Deep inside, Rory battled not only the external elements but the gnawing specters of self-doubt and painful rejection that had haunted her for years. In the midst of the tempest's roar, her thoughts became a silent monologue, a raw, unfiltered cry for redemption. "I must survive," the rhythm of her heart intoned. "And from this struggle, I will forge a new destiny." Even as the storm's fury escalated, and the cold threatened to freeze every hope into a permanent prison of despair, the defiant light within her began to surge, small sparks of silver hope colliding with the dark, indifferent fury of nature. This inner revolution was a secret promise, a powerful vow that no matter how oppressive the elements or how heavy the burdens of her past, she was destined to rise. Each droplet that fell, each biting gust that tore at her flesh, was a challenge. Reminder that she was still alive, still fighting, still yearning to reclaim the power that was rightfully hers. In that epic clash between nature's merciless wrath and the invincible spark of a resolute soul, Rory stood as the embodiment of fierce determination. The storm, both a physical and metaphorical tempest, was not merely a backdrop, but a crucible of transformation, where the old self was eroded away and a bold, unbreakable new spirit was about to be born. The forces of nature and the echoes of ancient regrets intertwined, crafting a scene of breathtaking intensity, a moment when every heartbeat became a resounding declaration of survival and defiance. As the relentless tempest raged on, the silver flame within Rory burned ever brighter, an unyielding beacon in a world of uncertainty. In that singular, dramatic convergence of elemental chaos and inner resolve, the stage was set for her epic transformation, a rebirth forged in the crucible of suffering, isolation, and indomitable courage. This was only the beginning of a journey that promised to shatter chains and rewrite the very meaning of destiny, leaving an indelible mark on every soul that dared to witness her extraordinary rise from the heart of the storm. A beacon in the blizzard, in the midst of the unyielding storm, as the biting cold threatened to swallow every spark of hope, a mysterious figure emerged like a shadow carved from the night itself. The swirling chaos of white and gray shifted, parting as if moved by an unseen hand, to reveal a solitary silhouette advancing with deliberate grace. This was Callum Blackthorne, an enigmatic presence whose dark outline defied the fury of the tempest. His eyes, like glowing embers of molten amber, cut through the swirling darkness, promising both danger and a sanctuary from the relentless storm. Callum's appearance was as sudden as it was striking. One moment, the world was a blur of howling, winds and swirling snow. The next, there he stood, a beacon amidst the elements. The intensity in his gaze, burning steadily under the cruel onslaught of nature, betrayed a profound strength honed by hardships of his own. In that moment, his presence was more than a rescue. It was a silent declaration that fate had brought him to this very juncture for a reason beyond mere coincidence. Without hesitation, he lunged forward, cutting through the storm's layers, with the fluidity of a seasoned warrior. "Come on, Rory," he roared, his voice resonant and commanding, piercing the cacophony of the blizzard with a message of both urgency and promise. His words carried the weight of both determination and compassion, echoing like a rallying cry against the elements. Despite the fierce environment that threatened to bury every last hopeful note, his call was a lifeline, a vivid reminder that in the midst of despair, one could still find courage, and perhaps even salvation. As Rory's weary eyes struggled to adjust to the new intrusion in her snowy prison, the sight of Callum stood as a stark contrast to the chaos around them. Where the storm's wrath was indiscriminate, his movement was precise, each step measured against the relentless assault of ice and wind. There was something almost otherworldly about how he moved, as if the tempest itself was willing to yield before him, clearing a path that would lead both of them to safety. His every gesture conveyed the knowledge of someone who had mastered not only the physical battleground, but the inner tumult that such rage can ignite. In the brief, charged seconds that followed, Rory could see the spark of a hidden truth in his eyes, a reflection of a pain not so different from her own, yet tempered by a resolve that seemed to transcend the cruelty of the world outside. It was as though Callum carried within him a secret promise of a better destiny, one where the stinging winds of rejection and bitterness could be overcome by a unifying force. As he reached out his hand, strong and unwavering, it was a gesture that hinted at more than just physical salvation. It was an invitation to join him in a battle not only against the savage storm, but against the fates that had long sought to define their lives. The ambiance around them transformed momentarily. In that isolated bubble of resilience amid the blizzard, every icy gust and every frozen flake of snow faded into the background, replaced by an unspoken bond forged through shared adversity. His molten amber eyes locked onto hers with such intense focus that it felt as though he could see through the layers of fear and despair to the core of her wounded soul. In that gaze lay the assurance of a future in which every harsh memory and every scar could be melted away by the warmth of a new beginning, a promise of redemption kindled by the meeting of two indomitable spirits. As they stood there, ensconced, within the raging tempest yet momentarily shielded from its full fury, The electricity in the air was palpable. It was a moment of suspended reality, where danger and sanctuary coexisted in a delicate, fragile balance. Callum, with his enigmatic aura and resolute determination, was no mere savior. He was the catalyst for a connection that would soon evolve into a partnership forged in fire, ice, and the echoes of ancient prophecies. And in that charged silence, the storm continued to rage, a constant reminder that every beacon of hope must eventually face its darkest night before it can truly illuminate a new path forward, a collision of destiny. In the aftermath of the storm's merciless fury, a silent, profound calm fell over the shattered remnants of the world around Rory. Yet within her chest, the battle had only just begun. A tempest of questions and emotions clashed as violently as the storm had mere moments ago. With Callum's intervention echoing in her ears, her heart pounded with conflicting feelings, a surge of anger tempered by an unexpected yet piercing hope. It was as though fate itself had collided with her will, shaking the very foundation of what she believed possible. Rory's mind whirled with tumultuous questions. How could a stranger have appeared at the exact moment I teetered on the brink of despair? Every fiber of her being vibrated with disbelief and indignation, anger at a world that had forsaken her, and a fierce resentment that her own journey had been marred by solitude and abandonment. Yet, as she locked eyes with Callum, whose gaze burned with an undeniable promise of transformation, that anger was slowly mingled with a glimmer of hope. His eyes, alight with the fire of a destiny yet to be fulfilled, seemed to pierce through the layers of her hardened exterior and unearth a long-dormant part of her soul. Callum's words, soft yet resolute, rang clear in the chaos of her inner world. "You're not alone in this," he declared, each syllable a beacon piercing through the shards of her fractured resolve. In his voice lay the unwavering certainty that what she had suppressed for so long was not a curse, but a blessing, a power, meant to ignite change. With those words, the oppressive weight of rejection and isolation began to lift, replaced by the thrilling spark of possibility. In that decisive moment, every doubt dissolved into a swirling promise of rebirth, as fate itself seemed to beckon her toward a life unshackled by past sorrows. The collision of destiny was more than a mere happenstance. It was a cataclysmic convergence of free will and the inexorable design of fate. Each heartbeat echoed this paradox, reverberating against the cold, indifferent silence of the storm. Rory's inner turmoil was a maelstrom of memories, bitter echoes of times when she was alone, cast aside by a pack that deemed her unpredictable. Yet now, amid the echo of Callum's call, there was a stirring of something new, a premonition that her inherent power, her silver flame, was not only her burden, but also her salvation. In that raw, unfiltered exchange, the past and future entwined. Her mind raced with thoughts of a destiny rewritten, a destiny where the scars of rejection transformed into symbols of resilient rebirth. The words lingering on her lips seemed almost to defy the icy grip of fate, as if each retort was a declaration of war against a past that had chained her spirit. In the reflective depth of Callum's eyes, she saw not pity, but an intensity that promised to mend the fissures of her soul, offering both solace and a call to arms. Within this crucible of emotion, the concept of free will emerged as a defiant anthem. Rory realized that though fate had brought her to this frigid, unforgiving moment, it was her choice, her courageous, deliberate act of defiance that would determine her future. As thunder rolled softly overhead, she could almost feel the weight of destiny pressing on her shoulders, urging her to break free from the narratives that had defined her. With every flicker of her inner light, she understood that the true battle was not with the external forces of nature or the relentless march of time, but with the legacy of despair that had been laid upon her spirit. In the intermingling shadows of that pivotal moment, the fervor of free will clashed with the written lines of fate. The promise in Callum's eyes, vibrant and unwavering, served as a mirror to her soul, a reflection of what could be if she dared to embrace the collision of destiny. And as the remnants of the tempest receded, Her heart, emboldened and resolute, beat with the fierce rhythm of a warrior ready to carve a new future from the chaos of her past. Refuge in the ice cave. As the tempest raged unabated outside, Callum and Rory plunged into a narrow opening in the ice, a jagged fissure that appeared as an accidental refuge amid the endless white fury. The stark, relentless cold of the storm was momentarily banished by the fragile shelter of the cave, a liminal space where harsh reality softened into an unsettling calm. Inside, the cavern's walls glistened with layers of frozen moisture, their sharp edges a stark reminder of the danger lurking even within moments of safety. The entrance, a rough, uneven slit in the ice, seemed almost deliberately carved by the indifferent hand of nature, offering an escape route in an otherwise unyielding wasteland. Outside, the blizzard continued its onslaught with unrelenting power. But here, in this tight, secluded space, a meager warmth held dominion, an almost imperceptible glow from within that whispered of survival and hope. Every step inside was cautious, measured. The ground beneath their feet was slick with frost, the soft crunch of ice echoing in the hushed silence of the cave. Callum's eyes scanned the dim interior, alert to every subtle shift of shadow and every sound that might hint at lurking danger. In this temporary sanctuary, even the silence carried weight. The distant roar of the storm outside seeped in like a persistent threat, a constant, menacing reminder that safety was only a fragile illusion. Rory's breath, still heavy from her desperate escape, mingled with the cool, moist air inside the cavern. Each inhalation brought not only the icy chill, but also the palpable tension that had followed her from the blizzard, a tension that now laced the cave's dim air with the urgency of survival. She found herself mesmerized by the interplay of light and shadow along the ice, the subtle glimmer of frost reflecting the faint luminescence of hidden minerals embedded in the walls. In this quiet interlude, the chaotic world outside seemed both distant and imminently dangerous. The meagerness of the warmth inside the cave was a stark contrast to the fury of the outside storm. There was no roaring fire to chase away the cold, only the soft, almost ghostly glow that hinted at life continuing quietly in defiance of the elements. This delicate balance between harsh exterior and fragile interior stirred a profound awareness in both of them. They had found a brief respite, but it was a pause before the next surge of peril. The cave was no fortress. It was a transient hiding place where every moment of calm was hard-earned, and every shadow could conceal the approach of danger. As they settled into the narrow sanctuary, the rush of adrenaline began to subside into a tense quiet. The sound of melting ice, a drip, then another drip, became a metronome for their racing hearts. Rory could almost feel the storm outside pulsing at the cave's entrance, a low, constant murmur that promised that safety was temporary, and that the battle for survival was far from over. The air inside was heavy with anticipation, each breath a reminder that the threat was never more than a moment away from breaking through the fragile barrier of shelter. In this huddled silence, Callum's reassuring presence was the only anchor in a world turned upside down by nature's fury. His steady gaze and calm instructions provided a counterpoint to the turmoil outside. Together, they shared a silent understanding. While the ice cave offered a momentary refuge, a pause in the chaos, it was also a fragile cocoon from which they might soon have to emerge, into the storm and into the looming danger that waited. Just beyond the cold, unyielding walls of their temporary sanctuary, awakening the silver flame, in the muted embrace of the ice cave's fragile shelter, Rory's mind churned with memories of past rejection and the heavy burden of a secret power she had long feared. Beneath the surface of her seemingly fragile exterior blazed an untamed light, a silver flame flickering weakly against the oppressive shadows of doubt and despair. Each heartbeat echoed with the remnants of loneliness, of nights when she had been shunned by those who could not see beyond the unpredictable nature of her gift. Now, in the sanctuary carved from ice and fleeting warmth, that gift trembled on the verge of an awakening. The chill in the air seemed to mirror the cold fear that had held her captive for so long. She recalled all too well the piercing isolation, the echoing voices of a pack that had cast her aside, labeling her power as a curse instead of a beacon of potential freedom. As these memories surged, so did her inner battle. A war waged between the instinct to retreat into the confines of her past self and the desperate yearning to break free and claim the strength burning within her. It was a struggle as raw and relentless as the storm that had driven her into this hallowed refuge. In that tumultuous silence, Callum's gentle words resonated like a soft but resolute promise. "You're not alone," he had murmured, his voice wrapping around her like a lifeline amid the encroaching darkness. Those simple words pierced the layers of fear and self-doubt, igniting a spark of courage within her. As if stirred by his unwavering belief, the silver flame within began to stir, its glow gradually intensifying, a silent rebellion against the inertia of old scars and self-imposed limitations. Rory's thoughts raced and collided. Each recollection of bitter rejection was countered by a fervent desire for liberation. The internal struggle was palpable, a haunting dance between the fear of what her own wild nature might unleash and the undeniable call to embrace that strength as the very essence of who she was meant to be. In the dim light of the cave, every shadow cast along the icy walls seemed to whisper her ancient, unfulfilled potential, urging her to confront the shackles of her past and ignite the power that had been hidden deep inside her heart. The air around her vibrated with a tangible sense of impending change. The flickering flame that had once seemed so meek now burned with an urgent intensity, as if it had been lying in wait for this very moment of vulnerability and rediscovery. Each spark of silver light reflected a promise of metamorphosis and rebirth. It was as if the universe itself had conspired to offer her a fleeting chance to turn a painful past into an extraordinary future. Amid the quiet, every delicate drip of melting ice echoed like a metronome, measuring the seconds that would determine the course of her destiny. As the internal storm reached a fevered pitch, Rory found herself suspended between fear and hope, a moment stretched taut, like the final note of a symphony on the brink of resolution. Her eyes, wide and glistening with unshed tears, betrayed both the terror of her own capacity to hurt and the undeniable allure of unbounded freedom. The battle within her was fierce and intimate, a collision of ancient wounds with a newfound defiant promise of self-acceptance. The silver flame, a symbol of all that she had been forced to hide, now pulsed with the potential to transform her into the force of nature she was destined to become. In that precarious moment, with Callum's steady presence anchoring her, Rory knew that the time had come to let go of the past and surrender to the very essence of who she was. The amalgamation of fear, hope, and raw determination coalesced into a single, unyielding resolve. The stage was set for a transformation that would not only redefine her fate, but also light a beacon for all those who had ever been cast aside. With the silver flame surging brighter than ever, she braced herself for the evolution that lay ahead, poised to embrace destiny in all its harsh, beautiful, and unfathomable glory. The call of destiny. As the stillness of the ice cave began to fracture under the weight of newfound power, Rory felt a tremor deep within, a prelude to something monumental. In the dim light, the silver flame that had long lain dormant stirred, erratically, flickering across her skin like restless lightning. Its shimmering dance was no mere spark. It was an omen of her true nature, a wild testament to the potential buried within her. Each pulse of light carried the echo of a destiny once denied, heralding a transformation that she could no longer ignore. The flame's erratic flares grew more pronounced, casting dynamic shadows on the icy walls and setting the cavern aglow, in pulsating hues of silver and pale blue. It was as if the flame was trying to communicate in a language older than time, a silent proclamation of the raw, untamed energy that defined her. Every unpredictable twist of the light mirrored the chaotic swirl of emotions inside her. The lingering pain of rejection, the deep-rooted anger at being cast aside, and the fervent hunger for freedom that had festered all these years. In the midst of this internal awakening, a whisper of fate murmured softly in the recesses of her mind. It was the recollection of a pack that had once spurned her, leaving indelible scars on her soul. She could still hear their disapproving echoes in the back of her thoughts, a chorus of voices condemning her unpredictable power. That memory, though painful, now merged with the incandescent promise of change. The flame wasn't just a harbinger of power, it was also a manifestation of the destiny they had tried to chain, a destiny that now pulsed in defiance of every past rejection. Rory's heartbeat accelerated in response, its rhythm intermingling with the pulsations of the silver glow. The chaos inside her was mirrored by the chaos outside. The storm beyond the cave was growing louder, its rage intensifying like the roaring crescendo of an ancient symphony. The shrill howl of the wind and the relentless barrage of icy rain seemed to summon the very forces of nature, urging her toward an inevitable reckoning. It was as if both the sky and her inner being were converging on the same moment, a moment when destiny would not simply beckon, but demand acknowledgement. In that charged instant, every memory of solitude and every harsh word of past abandonment was recontextualized as a necessary precursor to this explosive metamorphosis. The erratic flare of the silver flame was not a mere anomaly. It was a calling, a signal that her suppressed power was ready to break free from the shackles of fear and sorrow. It whispered promises of an existence defined not by the wounds of yesterday, but by the blazing promise of a future reclaimed. The flame shimmered unpredictably, as if testing the limits of its confinement, a visual crescendo that reached toward the heavens with defiant determination. Yet as the internal fire surged, the storm outside responded in kind. The howls of the wind grew more menacing, and the tempest's fury began to underscore a grim undertone that went far beyond natural calamity. There was a palpable sense that something darker was stirring in the wild, a threat that was more than just the elemental chaos of the winter. The rising tumult hinted at adversaries lurking on the periphery of her fragile sanctuary, menacing forces that were drawn not only to the fury of the storm, but to the unleashed power of her very soul. With every beat of her heart, Rory felt the stakes escalate. Her inner battle, now punctuated by the vibrant, erratic dance of the silver flame, signaled the dawn of a transformation that would irrevocably change her destiny. The murmuring winds outside grew louder, as if echoing the call of a fate that could not be ignored. And in that final, lingering moment of suspense, with the storm's ominous roar entwined with the unyielding flame within, the air itself seemed to vibrate with the promise of a new era, one defined by defiant power, relentless ambition, and the unwavering call of destiny. The menace beyond the cave, outside the fragile sanctuary of the ice cave, the world had not yet returned to calm. It had simply donned a different mask of peril. As Rory and Callum lingered in the cave's dim safety, the once muted sounds of the storm began to shift in tone, acquiring an eerie resonance that set her nerves on edge. Far beyond the jagged entrance, an unsettling mix of clashing winds and whispered echoes hinted at the approach of a new, more sinister threat, a danger that was far removed from the elemental chaos they had already endured. The familiar roar of the blizzard now carried with it an odd, discordant melody, an undercurrent of voices that seemed almost spectral, as if ancient grievances and long-forgotten curses had been stirred anew. The steady patter of ice and the mournful creak of frozen branches joined together in a symphony of foreboding, each note a harbinger of malevolence that belied nature's ordinary wrath. It was as if the storm had become a messenger, its sound, a low, persistent murmur, warning of hostile forces gathering in the dark recesses beyond the cave's threshold. Rory's heightened senses strained to capture every nuance of the unfolding menace. The cacophony outside was more than a roar of wind. It was a murmur of discontent, a foreboding prelude that made her skin crawl and her pulse quicken. Each gust of wind seemed infused with a spectral presence, carrying with it the faint, unnerving echo of voices laden with malice. These were not the random howls of nature, but sounds imbued with intention, as if an enemy with an agenda was silently converging upon their meager haven. With every shifting swirl of snow and every intermittent gust, the sense of danger grew, thick and palpable. Rory felt that the threat was not merely an extension of the storm, but the arrival of something darker, a cadre of enemies cloaked in shadow and malice, whose intentions were as chilling as the bitter cold. The boundary between the wild fury of nature and the deliberate machinations of an adversary began to blur, casting an unsettling pall over the scene. In that moment, every instinct in Rory screamed that the storm was only a veneer, hiding a far more malevolent force waiting to strike. The tension was punctuated by sudden, inexplicable silences, where even the howling wind seemed to pause, as if nature itself were holding its breath in anticipation of the impending conflict. Every shiver that ran down her spine, every rapid beat of her heart, confirmed that this was no mere battle against the elements. It was a prelude to a confrontation with an enemy whose presence was as sinister as it was deliberate. The familiar trail of the storm now appeared fraught with peril, its every twist concealing potential ambushes and hidden adversaries that would stop at nothing to shatter the fragile hope that had just begun to kindle within her. It was at that precise moment, when the foreboding whispers of the wind grew into a clamorous, ominous refrain, that Callum's voice cut through the mounting tension with urgent clarity. His eyes, steeled with resolve and scanning the dark horizon, bore into the gathering gloom outside the cave. "We need to go, now," he insisted, his tone brooking no argument, as if he alone could decipher the grim score that nature and destiny were playing. His words were a sharp command against the droning symphony of the storm, an unmistakable signal that the time for refuge had passed. With the threat looming like an ever-present specter, the delicate peace within the ice cave was shattered by the urgency in Callum's voice. The moment had arrived when every second counted, a moment when the icy grasp of impending danger demanded that they leave their meager sanctuary and step back into a world where menace and mystery intermingled. In that harrowing instance, as the eerie sounds beyond the cave's threshold swelled into a clarion call of impending peril, Rory knew that escape was no longer a choice, but a desperate necessity. Escaping to the unknown. The moment Callum's urgent command rang through the icy corridors, Rory's heart pounded with a mix of dread and determination. With no time to spare, they abandoned the relative safety of the cave's hollow embrace, plunging headlong into the labyrinthine passages carved deep within the frozen mountain. The exit, a narrow, twisting tunnel illuminated only by the faint glimmer of stray light, beckoned them into an uncertain realm where nature's wild, untamed force ruled. Inside the winding ice cave, every sound carried weight. A delicate drip of melting ice echoed like a ticking clock, punctuating the silence between their hurried footsteps. The floor beneath their feet was a treacherous mosaic of frost and brittle shards, crunching underfoot with each desperate stride. Shadows danced across the slick walls, cast by the unpredictable interplay of dim light and the sporadic glints of embedded minerals. In this cryptic passage, every sound and silhouette merged into an atmospheric symphony that heightened the tension of their escape. As they navigated the serpentine corridors, the air grew colder, and the cavern seemed to press in around them, its icy fingers drawing closer in a silent, mysterious warning. The labyrinth stretched on, a twisting network of frozen passages that obscured the path ahead, filling their minds with both awe and apprehension. The sharp scent of mineral-rich air mixed with the underlying staleness of ancient ice, weaving an olfactory tapestry that was as enigmatic as the route itself. Here, the passage of time felt suspended, each moment marked by the rhythmic drip of water and the crunch of ice underfoot. Every step further into the unknown kindled a flicker of both hope and apprehension in Rory's soul. Beyond the twisting maze of the cave lay a world that was as wild and unpredictable as her own inner fire. Though the safety of their temporary refuge had been shattered, the desire for liberation spurred them onward, into a realm where nature's raw beauty and treacherous allure coexisted in equal measure. The uncertain path ahead was filled with hidden curves and unexpected turns that promised both peril and the possibility of newfound freedom. The enemy's presence, dark and persistent, loomed like a shadow at the edge of her senses, a constant reminder that the danger they fled was not confined to the frosty depths of the cave, but was waiting in the cold, untamed wilds beyond. The distant, almost imperceptible rumble of enemy steps, and the low, menacing whispers of the wind carried hints of a looming pursuit, their ominous cadence urging them to quicken their pace. Every step forward was a silent prayer against the threat that followed, a vow to outpace the darkness creeping ever closer. In this moment of breathless urgency, the world outside the cave beckoned with a haunting, wild promise. The exit, a jagged portal framed by ice and shadow, was both an escape and a plunge into the unknown. The interplay of light and darkness outside was mesmerizing. Sunbeams fractured into countless shards as they broke through fleeting gaps in stormy clouds, creating ethereal patterns on the snow-covered ground. Yet, even this beauty was tinged with foreboding, for every gleam of light concealed the hidden dangers of a world where the untamed wild ruled with absolute authority. Rory's mind raced as the corridor opened wider, each step drawing her closer to the vast, uncharted wilderness, a domain where survival was a daily battle and destiny awaited in every shifting shadow. The air grew thinner, colder, and pregnant with the promise of both peril and rebirth. As she emerged from the suffocating confines of the ice cave, the unknown stretched before her like a vast, frozen tapestry, its secrets ready to be unraveled under the relentless gaze of the impending storm. In that charged instant, with the enemy's threat echoing in her ears and the wild calling to her with untamed allure, Rory stepped forward into a world where every heartbeat was a defiant drumbeat against fate. Stepping into destiny, emerging from the shadowy confines of the ice cave, Rory felt as though she were stepping out of a frozen chrysalis and into a world reborn. The moment was as profound as it was perilous, a threshold that separated the cold, static past she had known from a present pulsating with vibrant, living energy. Before her, the landscape unfurled in a dazzling display of wild colors, lush greens kissed by the gentle caress of spring sunlight, streams of water sparkling like scattered diamonds, and a sky that promised endless possibility beyond the lingering gloom of the storm. Every step forward echoed with both the weight of her haunted memories and the promise of a metamorphosis yet to come. The icy remnants of her previous confinement still clung to her, reminders of the harsh isolation and rejections that had marked her days and darkened her nights. But as the cave's narrow mouth receded behind her, it gave way to a realm that shimmered with the raw power of renewal. Here, the world was alive, a dynamic, ever-shifting tapestry of life, where every gust of wind and every ray of light seemed to herald the coming of something extraordinary. Rory paused for a moment, taking in the breathtaking panorama. The wild expanse before her was a brilliant paradox, a place where the remnants of winter's desolation blended with the burgeoning promise of spring. It was as if nature itself had orchestrated this dramatic shift to mirror her inner awakening. The bruised past that had once suffocated her now faded into a background of muted echoes, overshadowed by the vibrant, daring present that pulsed with every beat of her heart. The energy in the air was tangible, drawing her forward with a magnetic allure that she could no longer resist. In that suspended moment, she felt the whisper of destiny call out to her, a soft, yet insistent murmur carried on the gentle breeze that swept over the wilds. It spoke not only of survival, but of something far grander, the chance to reclaim the power that had been buried beneath layers of fear and self-doubt. Rory's gaze lifted to meet the radiant horizon, where the first hints of a new day shimmered like a promise. Her silver flame, once a secret and fragile glow, now stirred deep within, resonating with the vibrant pulse of the living world around her. Callum's reassuring presence lingered in her memory. His steady voice had offered not just shelter, but a vision of what could be. His words had ignited something fierce in her soul, urging her to break free from the chains of a lifetime spent in the shadows of rejection. Now, faced with the raw splendor of this untamed frontier, Rory understood that this was the moment that would define her future. The path ahead was uncertain and fraught with danger, yet it shimmered with a brilliance that beckoned her to step into it, to embrace the destiny woven into the fabric of her very being. With a deep, steadying breath, she took her first decisive step into the great expanse. The cold, stifling past was left far behind, replaced by the dynamic energy of the present, a world where the elements danced in wild abandon, and every whisper of the wind carried a message of hope and defiance. In that instant, as the landscape pulsed with life and the flame within her flickered boldly against the encroaching darkness, Rory felt the weight of fate settle upon her shoulders. Yet even as she moved forward, an unspoken, probing question lingered in the air, a question that resonated with the hearts of all who dared to dream of a future forged in fire and reclaimed power. Will Rory reclaim her true power, transforming the pain of her past into the beacon of her destiny and ultimately rise to become the force she was always meant to be? The awakening renewal. As Rory stepped into the wild expanse of the forest, a stark transformation unfolded before her eyes. Gone were the desolate, frozen remnants of her past. In their place, nature unfurled in a breathtaking display of renewal. Lush green stretched as far as the horizon, interwoven with vibrant blossoms that glowed under gentle beams of sunlight. The air was thick with the sweet, intoxicating scent of fresh growth, and delicate petals fluttered down like soft confetti, each one a silent herald of rebirth. The forest, alive with the gentle hum of nature, presented a stark contrast to the frigid confinement of the ice cave. Here, the earth pulsed with a dynamic vibrancy, a living canvas painted in hues of emerald and gold. Sunlight filtered through the dense canopy above, its rays dancing upon the forest floor in mesmerizing patterns that shifted with every whispering breeze. Every tree, every bush, and every blade of grass seemed to exude a promise of hope, an undeniable vitality that spoke of endless possibility. Yet, beneath the serene beauty of this verdant sanctuary, an undercurrent of tension lurked. The forest, with all its radiant renewal, was not free from shadows. There was a palpable intensity in the air, a discreet warning that danger still prowled amid the blossoming life. The interplay of light and shadow over the forest floor evoked a sense of anticipation, as if every glimmer of brightness was carefully balanced by a hidden threat in the darker recesses. The gentle rustle of leaves and the soft murmur of the wind carried hints of distant secrets, stirring an instinctive wariness within Rory. It was a reminder that even in moments of breathtaking beauty, the past was not easily forgotten, and adversity often hides behind the most tranquil scenes. In the midst of this delicate equilibrium between hope and peril, small details began to crystallize into signs of change. A cluster of wildflowers, vibrant and defiant, broke through the soft layer of moss covering an ancient stone. Their bright petals, standing out against the greenery, seemed to symbolize the fierce resilience of life, a beacon of renewal amidst continuous cycles of decay and rebirth. The rhythmic chirping of unseen birds and the gentle scuttle of forest creatures further punctuated the scene, creating a harmonious yet cautious symphony that resonated with the promise of new beginnings. Rory's heart swelled with mixed emotions as she absorbed the scene before her. The forest was a living testament to transformation, yet its beauty was interlaced with cautionary notes that hinted at forthcoming challenges. It was as if nature itself was whispering warnings of the conflicts, looming just beyond the comforting canopy of renewal. Those soft murmurs promised that the path ahead would not be an uninterrupted journey of rebirth, but rather one where moments of unbridled hope were interspersed with bursts of uncertainty and danger. Amid this intricate tapestry of life and latent conflict, shadows on the periphery began to stir. The forest, though brimming with resplendent color, held secrets in its depths, secrets that would soon take form in the guise of new characters emerging from the foliage. Their presence, hinted at by fleeting movements between the trees and the subtle shift in the ambient sounds of the wild, set the stage for future entanglements. These new faces, enigmatic and unpredictable, promised to challenge the fragile peace of the newfound sanctuary. In that charged atmosphere, where nature's renewal painted a hopeful picture, yet danger hummed beneath every leaf, Rory knew that her journey was far from over. The forest was not merely a refuge, it was a crucible of destiny, where every radiant blossom and every creeping shadow foretold the conflicts to come. And as the sunlight played its delicate dance across the forest floor, she couldn't help but wonder what trials awaited her, and whether she, with her burgeoning inner power, could overcome them to forge a truly new beginning. The mysterious stranger. In the midst of the jubilant renewal celebration, where laughter mingled with the soft whisper of nature and bright wildflowers crowned every opening of the forest, a presence both elusive and magnetic began to make itself known. At first, Rory's attention was drawn to a subtle shift among the vibrant throng of revelers, an almost imperceptible ripple in the air that heralded something unexpected. Emerging from the interplay of dancing shadows and gentle sunlight, a figure cloaked in earthy tones entered the clearing with a quiet, fluid grace that defied the ordinary. His movements were smooth and deliberate, as if he were an intrinsic part of the forest's rhythm. The man's attire, woven in shades of deep browns and muted greens, blended effortlessly with the natural surroundings, yet it was his eyes that seized the focus, a striking shade of jade, radiant and mischievous, that shone with a secret promise. There was an enigmatic quality in his gaze, a flicker of quiet mischief tempered by ancient wisdom and curiosity, that stirred something deep within Rory. In that brief, charged moment, his presence was as if a whisper of fate had manifested, challenging the established order of her world with a tantalizing hint of the unknown. Rory felt an unexpected pull toward this mysterious stranger, a magnetic attraction that unsettled her usual reserve. Her thoughts tumbled chaotically. Who was he? What mysterious currents had drawn him into this moment of renewal? And what role was he destined to play in the unfolding tapestry of her life? Every nuanced turn of his fluid motion, every gentle arch of his smile, told stories without words, evoking a sense of familiarity and intrigue simultaneously. As if his very existence defied the constraints of the past, he radiated both serenity and a latent provocation, a subtle invitation to step beyond what was known and embrace a future laced with untold possibilities. Even as the celebration vibrated, with lively energy, Rory felt the world around her narrow into a focused intimacy. The chatter of the revelers, the clinking of glasses, and the tender notes of music that carried through the forest all seemed to fade into a soft background hum. In its place, the enigmatic man's presence filled the space between them, a silent promise waiting to be deciphered. His jade eyes seemed to hold a hidden narrative, a secret that beckoned her to look deeper, to trust that he was more than merely a transient face in the crowd. Internally, a swirl of emotions ignited within Rory, a mix of cautious hope, burning, curiosity, and a tinge of trepidation. The memory of her past, of rejection and solitude, flickered in the recesses of her mind. Yet here, in this vibrant moment of communal rebirth, the stranger's unexpected allure whispered of a new chapter. His very appearance carried the weight of mystery and the anticipation of change, stirring dormant desires for connection and transformation within her. The allure was not overbearing, but subtle, a gentle tug at the edges of her hardened armor, promising that there could be a place for both defiant passion and quiet, enduring kinship. As the evening wore on and the celebration reached a fevered pitch, Rory found herself unable to shake the image of his cool, inviting eyes. With every glance from him, every fleeting, knowing smile, she sensed that he held the key to secrets yet unraveled, a role in the intricate interplay of destiny that lay just beyond her current understanding. His presence lingered in the air, like an unsolved riddle, inviting whispered speculation among those who noticed, while silently challenging Rory to embrace the mysteries of her own fate. And so, as the celebration continued amidst swirling colors and echoing laughter, the question remained: who was this mysterious stranger, and what part would he play in shaping the destiny that was fast approaching? The Festival of Rebirth. Beneath a vault of ever-changing sky, the forest came alive with a celebration that pulsed like the very heartbeat of nature. The annual spring renewal rite, a time-honored tradition of the pack, burst forth in a dazzling display of color and sound as intricate banners of woven vines and vibrant wildflowers danced high above, their hues vibrant against the lush emerald canopy. The air vibrated with an intoxicating medley of music, mellifluous flutes and rhythmic drums that echoed through the ancient trees, casting a spell of joyous unity over the gathered kin. The clearing itself was transformed into a living tapestry of festivity. Members of the pack, resplendent in their ceremonial garb, moved with a grace that belied the raw intensity of their spirits. Dancers swirled in intricate patterns, their silhouettes weaving a story of rebirth and rejuvenation with each deliberate step. The movement was rhythmic and almost hypnotic, a tribute to centuries-old rituals passed down by those who had long since joined the ancestral chorus of legends. Every leap and twirl, every subtle gesture, was a silent oath to honor the cycle of life and to defy the suffocating shadows of past winter's despair. Yet, amid the exuberance and beauty of the renewal rite, a somber undercurrent hinted at an ever-present peril. While the colors and melodies celebrated hope, there lingered a subtle tension, a residue of ancient rivalries and political discord that threatened to unravel the fragile harmony. Whispers of dissent, barely audible amid the revelry, drifted, like ghostly echoes through the crowd. Elders with faces etched by the passage of time exchanged glances that spoke of grudges and long-buried grudges. Their cautious murmurs hinted at factions secretly wary of change, of the power shifting steadily toward the new generation. The festivities became a stage where the aesthetic splendor of nature clashed with the simmering tensions of tradition. As joyful chants and the sounds of clinking vessels merged with the rustling of leaves, subtle symbols appeared, a torn banner here, a furtive glance there, each carrying the weight of ages-old feuds. The passionate cadence of the music, for all its life-affirming quality, occasionally gave way to an unsettling pause, as if nature itself were bracing for conflict. The interplay of light and shadow over the gathering lent an almost cinematic quality to the scene, where every smile and every frown hinted at hidden alliances and secret vendettas. In one corner of the clearing, a circle of elders gathered around, a time-worn stone altar, its surface encrusted with moss and delicate carvings that chronicled long-forgotten prophecies. Their voices, though subdued in the midst of celebration, began to rise in a low, measured chant, a recitation of ancient verses that carried echoes of fate and forewarning. The rhythmic cadence of their words merged with the music, momentarily, shifting the atmosphere from one of rapturous joy to one of wary anticipation. It was as if they were invoking a power that transcended the mortal realm, a power destined to tip the balance between old order and a revolutionary future. Across the clearing, beneath the myriad of swinging lanterns and fluttering banners, the eyes of younger warriors flickered with excitement, tempered by a hint of anxiety. They moved in deliberate patterns, their formation tight and calculated, a visual reminder that even amid this festive renewal, there were those who would not tolerate any deviation from the pack's ancient laws. The mingling of jubilation and latent hostility cast a poignant contrast, infusing every scene with a bittersweet edge that left one questioning. Could true renewal ever be achieved without confronting the ghosts of a tumultuous past? As the procession reached its apex, the soft murmur of the elders' chant grew louder, resonating through the clearing with an almost supernatural clarity. And in that charged moment, an ominous whisper, barely a breath yet laden with portent, cut through the jubilant harmonies, sending a ripple of unease along the fringes of the assembly. The air seemed to pause, heavy with the weight of what was yet to come, leaving the audience and Rory alike to wonder what ancient prophecy was stirring in the shadows, and how would it shape the future of all they held dear. Voices of prophecy, as the festival's vibrant energy simmered into a hushed, almost reverent stillness. A solemn aura descended over the gathering. In a secluded circle, under the protective canopy of towering ancient trees, the elders assembled around a time-worn stone altar. The altar itself was a relic from a bygone era, its surface marked with cryptic inscriptions and delicate carvings that whispered secrets of forgotten legacies. Faded symbols mingled with the patina of moss and weathered stone, each glyph hinting at a destiny that spanned centuries. Rory stood on the periphery of this sacred space, her eyes wide with a mixture of trepidation and curiosity as the elders began their ritual chant. Their voices, low and resonant, blended with the murmur of the wind and the distant rhythm of the forest. The incantations were spoken in a language that felt both ancient and intimately familiar, a tongue that hinted at elemental truths and cosmic cycles long buried beneath layers of modern understanding. Every word, every syllable, resonated as if it were carefully etched into her very soul, stirring dormant memories and unanswered questions. Internally, Rory's thoughts churned with a tempest of emotions. Could it be that I am the spark foretold by these venerable voices? She wondered, her mind racing between flickers of hope and the lingering echoes of her past solitude. Each cryptic phrase invoked images of ethereal beings and celestial battles, a heritage woven with both blessing and burden. The inscriptions on the altar, arranged in a seemingly random array of symbols, now formed a fragmentary map of her potential destiny. They spoke of a silver flame that would one day rise amid darkness, a light meant to unshackle the oppressed and transform a broken world. And as she traced the contours of these mystical marks with her eyes, Rory felt an inescapable pull, a call to claim that spark as her own. The elders' voices swelled in a hymn-like cadence, their words layered with the weight of ancient prophecies. "Child of the silver flame," one elder intoned, his voice cracking with a blend of wisdom and sorrow. "You are destined to rewrite the fate that has long chained our kind." The proclamation sent shivers through Rory's spine. Each utterance was both an affirmation and a burden, a promise of power interlaced with the realization that such power came with a cost. Doubts and longing converged within her. Am I truly the long-awaited beacon? Is it my fate to harness this fire and lead a revolution against the oppressive forces that have defined my past? These questions raced through her mind like sparks, igniting a fierce internal dialogue that was at once both exhilarating and terrifying. Though the ritual was cloaked in enigmatic symbolism, it revealed only fragments of a larger, incompletely understood destiny. The elders carefully measured their words, as if safeguarding secrets that were meant to be unveiled only when destiny itself was ready. Each revelation was intentionally vague, a glimpse of forgotten promises and ancient expectations that left more questions than answers. This deliberate mystique not only deepened the sense of wonder, but also stoked the embers of suspense, urging Rory to seek the truth hidden in the labyrinth of her own lineage. Around her, the assembled pack watched in silent anticipation, their expressions a mosaic of hope, fear, and uncertainty. Yet, amidst this charged atmosphere, Rory felt a stirring resolve awaken inside her. The voices of prophecy, ethereal yet commanding, had etched a promise into her heart, a promise that transcended the scars of rejection and the bitterness of solitude. In that transformative moment, as the ancient words mingled with the timeless murmurs of the forest, she understood that her journey was only beginning. The full tapestry of her destiny remained shrouded in enigma, leaving her to wonder if she could ever piece together the fragmented verses of her past to illuminate the path forward, and ultimately, if she would rise as the spark foretold to change everything. Shadows and intrigue. Just as the echoes of the prophetic chants faded into an uneasy stillness, a chill descended upon the festive clearing. a portent of an impending disruption. In the dim light, where laughter and renewal had once reigned, supreme furtive figures began to emerge from the darker fringes of the forest. These dissenters, outsiders marked by bitterness and an unwavering zeal to preserve the old order, stepped forward with a chill in their eyes and a venom in their voices. Their presence, abrupt and unyielding, cast long, menacing shadows over the celebration, shattering the fragile harmony that had blossomed moments before. The dissenters' declarations were as cold as the winter that had defined Rory's past, their words slicing through the air with an almost predatory precision. "You welcome the outcast, the bearer of cursed fire," they spat in unison, their tone laced with contempt and an ancient grudging fury. These statements reverberated across the clearing, each syllable echoing a long-held disdain for that which they regarded as impure. To the dissenters, Rory's emergence as a symbol of hope was a direct affront to traditions steeped in exclusion and fear, a reminder that change was not to be embraced, but crushed. Rory's heart pounded in response to each chilling declaration. What had begun as a celebration of renewal now teetered on the brink of collapse. With every hostile word, her internal resolve hardened like the winter's ice that once imprisoned her soul. Memories of a past, filled with rejection and isolation, surged through her mind. The harsh whispers, the cold dismissals, the very stinging pain of being shunned by those she had once called kin. Now, every bitter exclamation from these dissenters fueled her anger, transforming it into a potent mixture of defiance and determination. The fire inside her, that long-suppressed silver flame, flickered with renewed intensity as she vowed silently not to succumb to the bitter constraints of her past. Amid this charged atmosphere, the tension thickened as the dissenters began to form a perimeter around the celebration. Their presence was a living threat, a tangible force determined to enforce the age-old decrees of tradition by force if necessary. They moved with purpose, their faces carved from a grim determination that spoke of battles fought in the shadows, of ancient rivalries. Every gesture and every sneer they cast revealed a deeply ingrained fear, a fear that the very essence of change might unravel the balance of power they had fought so desperately to maintain. Rory felt the weight of their scorn like a physical force. The once gentle murmurs of nature were now overlaid with the discordant clamor of dissent, a symphony of tension that foretold a storm of conflict. As she looked around, every joyous burst of color seemed to clash with the dark forms of the dissenters, their hostile silhouettes threatening to smother the hopeful light of the festival. In that dramatic interplay of light and dark, the celebration was on the verge of fracturing under the strain of centuries-old grievances reborn. In the midst of this unfolding chaos, Rory's eyes blazed with unyielding determination. The pain of her past, the memories of isolation, and the scorn of those who would bind her to outdated dogma coalesced into a defiant roar within her soul. She silently vowed that she would not allow these bitter voices to extinguish the promise of her destiny. With every fiber of her being, she resolved to stand tall against the oppressive tide, to harness the power of her silver flame and turn these shadows into the stepping stones for her own metamorphosis. And as the dissenters closed in, their chilling declarations echoing in the charged air, the question hung palpably over the assembly. Was this the moment when the ancient, deep-seated rivalries would collide head-on with a new dawn of hope? Or would the old order finally silence the spark of a revolutionary fire? Rallying, cry of defiance, the charged air vibrated with anticipation as Callum stepped forward, his presence slicing through the mounting tension like a blade of pure resolve. In a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, he raised his voice, a clarion call that resonated with both the weight of tradition and the promise of radical change. His words were a brilliant amalgam of compassion and commanding authority, reverberating across the clearing with an urgency that could not be ignored. "Enough!" Callum's declaration thundered, echoing against the ancient trees and stirring the hearts of everyone gathered. His eyes, deep pools of determination, scanned the anxious crowd, and as he spoke, his voice imbued each syllable with a fervor that eclipsed the bitter whispers of the past. For too long, we have been chained by the dogmas of an old order, an order that fears change and condemns those who dare to shine differently. Today, we stand at the precipice of a new dawn. Today, we choose defiance over submission. His words cascaded over the assembly like a wave of revolutionary intent, the cadence of his speech a rhythmic pulse that stirred dormant courage in every heart. The very air seemed to quiver with the impact of his message. In that incandescent moment, the rebellious spark of the silver flame within Rory blazed even brighter, its light reflecting the intensity of her newfound conviction. Her eyes, previously clouded with the shadows of isolation, now shone with the promise of emancipation, a promise forged in the fires of Callum's stirring rhetoric. The fervor in Callum's voice was not solely an expression of defiance. It was an invitation to unity, a call for every outcast, every silenced soul, to rise together against the chains of bitter tradition. "We are not the forgotten ones cast aside by a rigid past," he proclaimed, his tone softening momentarily, with compassionate empathy. "We are the harbingers of a future where our unique strengths will light the path to freedom. Today, we reclaim not just our power, but our very identity, and together, we will reshape our destiny." A palpable energy began to ripple through the crowd. Faces that had been etched with worry and resignation now lit up with determination. Murmurs of agreement and the quiet echo of claps began to swell into a resounding chorus. As Callum's words washed over them, even those who had long harbored doubts about the possibility of change found themselves caught up in the magnetic allure of his vision. The dissenters' cold proclamations, once so oppressive, now felt like fading echoes against the rising tide of unified rebellion. Every heart in the clearing beat in sync with the rhythm of his impassioned speech. In the eyes of the young and old alike, a flicker of defiance glowed fiercely, a collective realization that the time had come to cast aside the weight of outdated decrees and to embrace a future forged by courage, love, and unyielding determination. The atmosphere was electric, charged with the imminent promise of a revolution that would topple the suffocating reign of tradition. As we stand together, united by our scars, our dreams, and our fire, we signal the beginning of an era that honors our spirit rather than suppressing it. Callum continued, his tone rising to a crescendo that sent shivers down every spine. Let this be our rallying cry, our collective declaration. We will not be bound by a past that seeks to define us, but we will soar into a destiny that we create together. The words hung in the air, a resounding vow of revolution. In that fleeting yet eternal moment, the seeds of change were sown amid the crowd. Every soul present felt the undeniable pull of a future where defiance would triumph over despair. And as the assembly roared its silent assent, a profound question lingered on the edge of every breath. With hearts united and the call of destiny echoing, were they ready to shatter the confines of the old order and embrace the radical transformation that beckoned them into a new, uncharted era, the shrine of forgotten ancestors, deep within the heart of the forest, where the canopy thickens and the rustle of the wind whispers ancient secrets? A hidden relic awaits discovery. Tucked away behind a veil of cascading vines and intertwined branches lies an ancient shrine, a silent monument to a past long obscured by the passage of time. Its weathered stone facade, etched with cryptic symbols that shimmer faintly in the shifting light, speaks of legacies and forgotten lore. The relic exudes a soft, enigmatic glow that both comforts and haunts, hinting at buried memories and potential power just waiting to be awakened. Rory paused before the shrine, her eyes drawn to the subtle, intricate carvings that spiraled along the surface of the stone. Each symbol, though worn by time, seemed imbued with a silent language, a language of ancestors whose voices now echoed only in the quiet of the woods. The soft luminescence emanating from the altar was as if the shrine itself were breathing, a tender pulse of energy that resonated deep within her. In that luminous moment, the relic called to her in a way that was both inexplicable and profoundly intimate. Inside, her mind swirled with introspection. Thoughts of long-held mysteries and unfulfilled destinies converged as she traced her fingertips lightly over the engraved markings. Who were these people? She wondered, feeling the weight of ancestral longing in the delicate script. Could my own blood carry echoes of these forgotten voices? Each crevice and faded line seemed to hint at a lineage shrouded in both magnificence and sorrow. Stories of triumph and tragedy that had been kept secret by time and neglect. The shrine's aura was both inviting and foreboding, inviting her to explore the depths of her own identity, while warning that such knowledge came with its own burden. The gentle glow that suffused the stone evoked images of a past where power and destiny were intertwined, a heritage that might explain the mysterious silver flame within her. Yet, with every flicker of light upon the ancient carvings, a cautious uncertainty stirred within her heart. The relic did not offer all the answers. Rather, it cast tantalizing shadows that deepened the mystery of her lineage. The symbols whispered of a destiny that was both vast and uncharted, a saga left incomplete, urging her to seek out the truth of where she came from and what she might one day become. Around the shrine, the forest fell into a hushed reverence. The rhythmic chorus of nature, the soft drip of dew, the muted rustle of leaves and distant bird calls seemed to form a sacred counterpoint to the shrine's quiet majesty. In that stillness, Rory found herself contemplating the paradox of forgotten identity and potential power. The shrine symbolized both an end and a beginning, a bridge that connected her fragmented past to a destiny yet to be written. Could it be that within these ancient inscriptions lay the answers to the questions that had long tormented her? Why had she been shunned? What secret legacy did she inherit from those who came before? As her gaze lingered upon the shrine, she felt an increasing pull, a magnetic compulsion to uncover the hidden chapters of her story. The relic's mysterious allure offered neither comfort nor finality, only an invitation to a journey of discovery. Yet even as she reached out to lean closer, a part of her hesitated, burdened by the fear of what she might unearth. For in every symbol and every glimmer of light, there lay the echo of a fate that was waiting to be claimed, but not without its price. In that charged silence, as dusk began to claim the day, Rory could only wonder who were the forgotten ancestors that had forged the path she now trod, and would the secrets embedded in this shrine unlock the power within her to redefine her destiny? The warning call. As the soft luminescence of the shrine bathed the clearing in an otherworldly glow, a sudden shift in the atmosphere signaled that destiny was about to take a sharper turn. Rory, still lost in the echoes of ancient inscriptions and the quiet murmur of forgotten legacies, felt a presence beside her, a presence that carried both promise and peril. Out of the shadows stepped a figure cloaked in mystery, his features obscured beneath a dark, intricately decorated mask that exuded an unsettling aura. His arrival was silent yet deliberate, as if he had been summoned by fate itself. For a tense moment, time seemed to freeze, and the only sound was the slow, measured drip of water from the cave ceiling. The stranger's eyes, glinting with a cold, dangerous light behind the mask, fixed on Rory with an intensity that cut through the quiet reverence of the shrine. With a voice that mingled the hardness of ice with a surprising tenderness, he broke the silence. "You have been seeking answers in places meant for the departed," he said, his words resonating like a secret incantation. His tone was neither wholly kind nor overtly cruel. It held the weight of long-forgotten truths and a warning that could not be ignored. But know this. Every revelation comes with a price. The power you yearn to embrace is bound by ancient curses, ones that have claimed many before you. Rory's breath caught as his statement hung in the air, each word an echo of both menace and encouragement. She could feel the sting of old wounds resurfacing, the memories of rejection and solitude intertwining with the newfound spark of her own potential. His presence seemed to peel back the layers of her guarded heart, exposing the vulnerability beneath her defiant exterior. "Do not mistake your longing for a simple desire for power," the masked stranger continued, his tone softening slightly as though to console. Yet his voice maintained an edge that warned of consequences. "It is not merely a gift. It is a burden, a legacy written in blood and sorrow. To harness this force, you must accept every part of your destiny, both the light and the darkness." As his words sank in, Rory felt her internal landscape shift. The mystique of his message mingled with an overwhelming sense of foreboding. Here was someone who knew the weight of ancient legacies and the peril of unchecked transformation. His every syllable spoke of battles fought in hidden realms, of curses that had long plagued those with a spark of untamed power. Yet, in the midst of his stern warning, there was an unmistakable undertone of hope, a recognition of the potential for redemption and rebirth. "You carry the flame of those who were once silenced," he murmured, leaning slightly closer so that the glow of the shrine revealed the faintest hint of compassionate concern in his eyes. "But if you let the darkness consume you, you will become the very curse you despise." His words, laced with both empathy and the chill of inevitable fate, struck Rory like a surge of icy water, rude, unexpected, and yet stirring something deep within her. For a long, heart-pounding moment, the two stood in charged silence, the soft hum of ancient energies weaving around them. The masked stranger's declaration had awakened in Rory a visceral realization. She was at the precipice of transformation. The choice to wield her power, to merge her broken past with the promise of a new future, now rested solely on her shoulders. "Will you let the legacy of despair define you? Or will you step forward, embrace your curse as a catalyst for change, and transform it into a beacon for those still lost?" he asked, his voice a blend of quiet challenge and earnest supplication. In that suspended heartbeat, Rory's mind raced with the enormity of his question. The weight of the stranger's warning intermingled with the tender flicker of possibility, an invitation to take control, to forge her destiny in spite of an ancient curse. His words lingered, a haunting reminder that her next choice would be the turning point of her journey. The assault begins. In an instant, the delicate harmony of the renewal celebration shattered like glass, struck by a cold, unyielding force. The tranquil air that once carried the gentle hum of nature was violently ruptured by a cacophony of rage and dissent, as a fierce enemy force suddenly surged into the clearing. Like a dark tide rising unexpectedly, the dissenters, faces hardened with bitter resolve and eyes gleaming with ancestral enmity, burst forth from the periphery. Their arrival transformed the scene from one of hopeful rebirth to a maelstrom, of violence and chaos in mere seconds. The once jubilant melodies that had celebrated life and renewal were drowned out by shouts and the clashing of crude weapons. The rhythmic drumbeat of the celebration faltered under the heavy, discordant beat of the enemy's advance. The vivid banners, which moments before danced playfully in the light, now whipped violently in the gusts of a storm that seemed to echo the fury of these aggressors. Every joyful expression in the crowd was abruptly replaced with a look of alarm and dread, as if the very soul of the gathering was recoiling from the invasion. Rory, who had just felt the rising embers of her destiny, now saw that fragile hope, blurring beneath the shadow of imminent peril. The dissenters moved with a cold, purposeful precision, their actions leaving no space for hesitation. Their approach was measured and relentless, a direct confrontation with the ancient traditions that had long stifled change. In the midst of the uproar, the peaceful cadence of nature, once a comforting backdrop, became a stark reminder of how quickly tranquility could turn into turmoil. Amid the escalating chaos, a sharp, decisive cry rose above the commotion. Callum, standing tall amidst the rapidly spreading disarray, bellowed a command that resonated with both fury and urgent compassion. His voice, once a beacon of defiant hope, now echoed as a rallying cry for survival. "This is not our time to falter," he shouted, his tone leaving no room for doubt. "Gather your strength. We must retreat, regroup, and strike back before they overwhelm us." The shift in mood was as dramatic as it was swift. Where moments earlier the clearing had pulsed with life and communal hope, now every face was etched with the chill of fear and resolve. The dissenters surged forward like wolves on the prowl, their aggression undeniable and their intent clear. The air vibrated with the sounds of clashing steel, the scatter of footfalls, and anguished cries that mingled with the enraged howls of the invaders. In the heart of the chaos, Rory's instincts screamed for action. Every fiber of her being was ignited by a dual urge: to unleash the raw power contained within her silver flame and to find refuge from this overwhelming force. The time for passive defiance was gone. Now was the moment for tactical survival. As the frenzied melee escalated, Callum's eyes locked with Rory's in a moment of silent understanding. His gaze, intense and resolute, confirmed that their unity was their strength, and that together they must navigate the treacherous path ahead. With no time to spare, Callum led the way. His commanding presence carved a path through the chaos, urging the gathered pack to follow him into a tactical retreat. The vibrant clearing, once alive with jubilant celebration, transformed into a battleground of desperate withdrawal. Amid the tumult, every step was weighted with both the fear of being overrun and the burning determination to survive, a survival that now required retreat in order to forge a future of defiant resistance. As they raced through the forest's edge, the discordant sounds of battle receded momentarily into the distance, replaced by the sharp urgency of fleeing footsteps and fractured battle cries. The enemy's assault had not been quelled. It would resurface, relentless and unyielding. And as Callum's steady lead guided them away from the chaos of the clearing, Rory's mind raced with one piercing question. In the face of such raw, unbridled aggression, could they regroup and mount a revolution that would transform these dark moments into the spark of a new beginning? Flight through the ancient woods. The forest around them erupted in a wild, kinetic dance as Callum and Rory plunged into its ancient depths, fleeing the onslaught of their relentless pursuers. The once familiar forest now transformed into a tumult of shadow and light, where every twisting branch and tangled undergrowth seemed to whisper urgent warnings. Every step they took was a desperate race against time, their hearts pounding in unison as the chaotic clash of battle faded into a cacophony of rustling leaves and distant shouts. The dense canopy overhead framed the pair with a mosaic of wavering darkness and fleeting beams of sunlight. Each shard of light sliced through the gloom like a promise of sanctuary, yet the forest floor, thick with damp moss and scattered with brittle twigs, betrayed the fragile beauty of the scene with its treacherous terrain. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and ancient pine, mingling with the adrenaline-fueled metallic tang of imminent danger. Every breath they took was punctuated by the rhythmic drumming of rain against foliage and the frantic crunch of their hurried footsteps. Callum led the charge, his every movement refined by years of experience, yet the urgency of the moment lent a raw, almost frantic quality to his actions. Rory clutched his hand tightly as they darted through narrow passageways between colossal trees, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers in the half-light. In the midst of the chaos, intimate glances were exchanged, a silent acknowledgement of the unspoken bond forged by shared peril. For an ephemeral moment, as the darkness pressed in around them, their eyes met with a spark of warmth that countered the overwhelming tension. It was a brief respite, a breath of tenderness amid the frantic escape. The forest itself seemed alive with both menace and magic. Ethereal mists swirled around ancient trunks, and delicate ferns unfurled under the touch of the wind as if in greeting. Yet these same woods concealed hidden dangers, twisting paths that could confound even the most determined escape, and unseen creatures that stirred in the underbrush as if drawn by the scent of vulnerability. Every rustle in the distance, every distant cry, was a reminder that the enemy was never far behind. Every heartbeat amplified the fear that their sanctuary might dissolve at any moment into violence once more. As they pressed deeper into the labyrinth, Rory's thoughts turned into a tangle of questions. The forest, with its timeless presence and enigmatic beauty, seemed to hold secrets of its own, a silent promise that within its ancient boughs lay both refuge and revelation. With each step further into the wilderness, her pulse quickened not only from the chase, but from the rising conviction that their flight was the beginning of a profound transformation. The boundaries of her past, marked by pain and isolation, were dissolving as the forest whispered of rebirth and change. Callum's steady grip on her hand anchored her, even as the rush of adrenaline threatened to overwhelm her senses. His determined gaze reassured her that this escape was not merely about evasion. It was a deliberate step toward a destiny yet to be defined, a journey into the uncharted realms of hope and possibility. But as the forest canopy thickened and the path grew more uncertain, an unsettling question began to emerge in the depths of her mind. In this wild, ancient woodland where every leaf and shadow seemed to conspire in the dance of destiny, Rory and Callum found themselves not just fleeing an enemy, but hurtling toward an unknown future. With the spectral glow of mysterious light guiding them, and danger echoing in every rustle of leaves, one pressing question loomed amid the chaos. What awaits them at the end of this treacherous path, and will the forest yield the sanctuary and revelation they so desperately seek? The promise of belonging. Amid the tumultuous escape and the adrenaline-fueled rush through ancient woods, a quiet, almost hallowed pause emerged on a hidden trail. Here, in a secluded clearing where the dappled light filtered softly through, a canopy of venerable trees, Rory allowed herself a moment of vulnerability, a breath of stillness far removed from the maelstrom of violence that had recently surged around her. In this intimate interlude, the fierce tumult of battle temporarily receded, replaced by a gentle introspection that laid bare her deepest longings. Rory's gaze softened as she surveyed the tranquil trail, where each step seemed to whisper promises of renewal and a newfound sense of belonging. The harsh echoes of the conflict faded into a tender murmur. In the silence, the forest itself appeared to cradle her spirit, a sanctuary of verdant greens and subtle light, playing upon moss-covered roots. It was here that she could feel both the weight of past rejection and the exhilarating possibility of a future woven with acceptance. With her heart still beating rapidly from the recent chase, Rory's thoughts turned inward as she recalled the loneliness that had once defined her. The bitter memories of isolation and the cruel judgment of those who had cast her aside surfaced like fragile shadows in her mind. Yet now, amidst the serenity of the hidden trail, those old wounds began to soften. Her inner voice, hushed yet insistent, pleaded for connection, a deep yearning to belong, to be seen and cherished for all that she was, including the untamed silver flame that glowed within her. Before she could fully drown in her reflective reverie, a steady, reassuring presence drew her back from the brink of solitude. Callum, whose determined stride had led them safely through chaos, paused beside her. His eyes, ever watchful and tender, met hers with an expression that was as much an unspoken promise as it was a salve for her wounded soul. "You are not alone, Rory," he said softly, his words a gentle balm that eased the lingering ache of abandonment. "In our unity lies our strength. Together, we are a force that can reshape destiny." His voice, calm and warm, infused her with a surge of courage, affirming that her vulnerabilities were not weaknesses, but the very essence of her unique power. As they stood side by side, the intimacy of the quiet moment deepened their connection, an unspoken understanding that in the midst of uncertainty, they could rely on one another. Rory's hand found solace in Callum's firm grip, a delicate affirmation that the bonds forged in the crucible of shared adversity were resilient enough to outlast even the darkest of trials. The intimacy of this pause contrasted sharply with the earlier chaos, a peaceful counterpoint where the raw edges of fear and anger softened into hope and gentle resolve. Yet beneath the tender veneer of belonging and newfound unity, there remained a simmering tension, a reminder that the respite was but temporary. The forest, with its ancient whispers and hidden perils, held secrets of conflict that had yet to be confronted. Even as the soft light played upon their faces and the harmonious rustle of leaves lulled the moment into tranquility, the memory of the enemy's relentless pursuit loomed like a distant storm cloud. Rory's heart skipped a beat as she sensed that what felt like a moment of healing was merely a prelude to the next battle, a conflict that would test the strength of the alliance they had so dearly earned. In that fragile, reflective silence, Rory's eyes shimmered with both vulnerability and determination, her longing for true belonging, a place where she could embrace her full self without fear, mingled with the burning anticipation of impending challenges. The promise of unity, nurtured by Callum's unwavering support, gave her the courage to face the unknown. And as the soft murmur of the forest stirred around them, a single question echoed in the depths of her mind. Could their bond, forged in such intimate defiance of the past, withstand the coming storm and guide them to a destiny where every soul finds its rightful home? The pulse of rebellion, in the stillness that followed their fleeting respite, the forest around Rory and Callum began to thrash with an undercurrent of conflict, a rhythmic, inexorable drumbeat that paralleled the pounding of Rory's heart. Every pulse, every heartbeat, was transformed into a powerful testament of rebellion rising from within her. It was as if the very essence of revolution began to seep from her, a vital force that urged her to cast off the lingering fears of the past and step boldly into the maelstrom of impending change. Outside, the ancient woods echoed with the ominous approach of enemy forces, an external fury that rose like a tempest against their hard-won sanctuary. The harmonious murmurs of nature, once so tender and nurturing, now fractured into a clamor of discordant sounds. The rustling of leaves, the hiss of the wind, and even the soft drip of water that had provided a lullaby moments ago merged into an almost musical cadence. Each sound marked a step closer to imminent assault. This interplay of natural rhythms and the trembling beat of her own heart conjured an image of a revolution both within and without. A dual uprising that was as raw as it was inevitable. Rory's inner conflict was palpable. With every thundering beat of her heart, she could feel a surge of defiant energy building within her, a silent march of liberation that refused to be stifled by the chains of her past rejection. The relentless throb was a metronome for her transformation, a call to arms that vibrated in unison with the stirring echoes of the encroaching enemy. The sound was rhythmic and almost poetic, an anthem of fear mingled with fierce hope, resonating deep within her soul. It was as though the very fabric of her being was woven with the strands of rebellion, each heartbeat igniting a spark destined to burst into roaring flames. As the external pressure mounted, each footstep of the enemy drawing nearer, each echo of hostile voices penetrating the fragile silence, Rory's mind raced with images of what the future might hold. Her thoughts swirled in tandem with the rising cadence of her pulse, creating an inner symphony that played a score of relentless defiance. The emotions were a tumultuous blend: terror at the face of certain danger, an ember of hope that refused to flicker out, and a resolute determination to stand tall against overwhelming adversity. She felt it in every part of her, a celestial rhythm that beckoned her to lead not only her own revolution of self-acceptance, but to spark a wider insurrection against the forces that sought to bind her. Callum's presence served as both anchor and catalyst amidst the storm. His steady gaze and quiet command lent strength to her mounting resolve, as he too absorbed the pulses of imminent battle. Together, their synergy was a defiant heartbeat, a shared promise that unity would be their shield against the approaching tempest. The intimate moments of quiet introspection that they had just savored were now morphing into a battle cry, an unspoken vow that they would rise, side by side, to challenge the dark tide of opposition. And so, the warm glow of their shared hope began to merge with the cool dread of the advancing enemy, creating an atmosphere charged with the electric tension of impending conflict. As Rory's heart pounded like the drum of war, every beat resounded as a clarion call to action, a call so palpable that even the ancient trees seemed to sway in acknowledgement. In that powerful moment, caught between the intimate sanctuary of their earlier reprieve and the brutal reality of the looming clash, the rebel within her surged forward. With the enemy's forces nearly upon them and her inner revolution rising to a crescendo, Rory felt the tide of her destiny swell. The question now loomed, insistent and unyielding. Would she harness this pulse of rebellion to forge a new path of freedom? Or would the encroaching darkness snuff out the flame that burned so fiercely in her heart? Confrontation at the clearing. In the heart of the ancient forest, amidst a clearing shrouded in both light and darkness, an eerie tableau unfolded. A setting where the whispers of ancient prophecies converged with the harsh echoes of modern conflict. At the center of the clearing stood an aged pedestal, its surface weathered by time and adorned with cryptic symbols that glowed faintly under the somber sky. Around this altar, shadowed figures moved silently, their presence heavy with foreboding intent, as if centuries of unresolved grudges had manifested into tangible threat. Rory stood at the edge of this charged scene, her eyes fixed on the pedestal as if it held the secrets of her destiny. Her heart pounded in a rhythm that mirrored the escalating tension, a deep, resonant drum of both dread and fierce determination. Every pulse of her racing heart seemed to echo the ancient incantations that the elders once whispered, prophecies that hinted at the coming of a storm destined to shatter the old order. In that moment, the clearing was more than a battleground. It was a crucible, where the remnants of a bygone era clashed with the untamed aspirations of the future. All around her, the air was thick with anticipation. The twilight deepened, and as shadows lengthened, the figures encircling the pedestal drew closer, their faces obscured by the interplay of flickering light and receding darkness. Some moved with deliberate purpose, their every step measured and foreboding, while others lurked in the peripheral gloom as silent sentinels of an imminent reckoning. The temperature seemed to drop, and each breath became visible, a fleeting plume in the cold air, as if the very atmosphere was holding its breath before the storm. Within Rory, a turbulent storm raged. Memories of past rejections, the echoes of isolation, and the haunting allure of a power she had long suppressed all vied for dominance in her mind. Yet, now, as the stakes mounted in the clearing, a new resolve began to crystallize from the chaos. Her inner turmoil transformed into an almost palpable defiance. The fear that had once threatened to shackle her spirit now fueled her determination. It was as if the ancient prophecies etched into the stones around her were speaking directly to her soul, challenging her to embrace the destiny that had always been both her curse and her salvation. The ground beneath her feet, scattered with fallen leaves and delicate remnants of the forest's timeless cycle, felt like the final threshold between what had been and what must come. Callum's steady presence at her side served as an anchor in the tempest. His eyes, full of unwavering resolve and subtle tenderness, met hers, silently affirming that together they would face the darkness. Their intertwined fates now converged. On this very clearing, where every breath, every heartbeat, carried the weight of a future yet unwritten. As the rival forces closed in, the atmosphere reached a fever pitch. The resounding murmur of the gathering enemy, the rustle of shifting armor, and the soft, ominous murmurs of discontent blended into a dissonant symphony of impending conflict. In that charged pause, time itself seemed to stretch, a dramatic silence that was as much a precursor to the clash as it was an invitation for fate to decide the outcome. Rory's eyes narrowed with determination, and a spark of defiance ignited deep within her, setting her spirit aflame. And then, in one final, heart-stopping moment before the storm of battle broke fully upon them, a single echoing voice rose from the assembly, a voice that carried a challenge so profound and personal that it sent a shiver down Rory's spine. As the enemy drew near, the question loomed large in the charged air, leaving the fate of her destiny suspended in the balance. Would Rory rise to shatter the chains of her past and emerge as the beacon of transformation foretold by ancient prophecy? Or would the mounting dread finally claim her spirit? The duel of destiny. In the charged vortex of the clearing, where the whispers of ancient prophecies clashed with the raw fury of modern defiance, the air itself trembled with the sound of impending battle. At the forefront stood Callum, a living embodiment of rebellion, his eyes blazing with a fierce determination that cut through the night like a sharpened blade. Around him, Rory's allies formed a resilient circle, united by a shared vision of liberation and fueled by the incandescent promise of change. As the representatives of the old order advanced, their movements were cold and relentless, the embodiment of an age-old hatred that had refused to yield. The enemy forces, forged in the crucible of long-held resentments and rigid dogma, surged forward with brutal precision. Their armor, scarred and heavy with the weight of tradition, clanged against the ground in a discordant symphony, each step a reminder of a past that sought to shackle the future. Then, as though summoned by fate, the duel erupted, a dance of life and defiance. Callum met the enemy leader at the very heart of the clearing. Their first clash was a spectacle of raw power and fluid grace, a collision of wills that sent sparks flying. Callum's sword moved like liquid silver, its every parry and thrust executed with a balletic finesse that belied the intense fury simmering beneath. In stark contrast, his opponent's blade struck with the unyielding force of ancient oppression. Each brutal blow meant to crush the spark of revolution that Callum and his allies represented. The sound of clashing steel rang out, sharp and metallic, punctuating the air with each impact. Every furious exchange ignited a tempest of emotion. Rage at the weight of outdated traditions, hope for a future unburdened by the shackles of rejection, and the fierce, defiant resolve that burned in Rory's heart, even as she watched from the sidelines. The duel was not merely a battle of swords. It was an elemental struggle, a living metaphor for the war between the fluid promise of a new era and the rigid, suffocating legacy of the past. Callum's movements were a masterful blend of speed and precision. Each parry was a swift ripple through time, each thrust a decisive declaration that the old ways would no longer define their destiny. The enemy's attacks, powerful yet archaic, met Callum's agile ripostes with violent clashes that sent tremors through the ground beneath their feet. With every clash, the very air seemed to shimmer as if charged with unspent energy, a testament to the underlying force of rebellion coursing through him. Around the circle, allies fought with similar fervor. Their own duels, smaller yet equally intense, painted a panoramic view of defiance, a tapestry woven with the raw threads of individual battles that coalesced into a larger war. The fluid swirls of their blades, the quick, precise footsteps that outmaneuvered heavier, outdated forms of resistance, and the defiant expressions on their faces served as a rallying cry, a vivid portrayal of a new era coming into being. Visceral. Images flared with every moment. Droplets of sweat, splintered sparks of light, and the crimson stains of clashing blades mingled with the muted hues of the forest. Each slash of steel was accompanied by the rhythmic pounding of hearts unified by a single purpose. In that maelstrom of chaos and courage, the scent of fear melded with the tang of iron and the soft, earthy aroma of blood-stained soil, a sensory manifesto of the battle's intensity. As the duel roared on, the focus narrowed to the intense exchange between Callum and his adversary, a microcosm of the larger conflict. Their eyes locked in, a silent duel of wills, each recognizing in the other the embodiment of everything they sought to either uphold or overthrow. In that moment, the battle swelled into a peak of raw, unfiltered emotion, a singular clash where every move was steeped in history, and every swing of the blade bore the hope of a revolution. And so, the question hung, as palpable as the electric charge in the air. Would the fluid, defiant strength of Callum and his allies finally shatter the brutal constraints of the old order? Or would the merciless force of ancient hatred snuff out the promise of a new dawn? The awakening of the silver flame, in the midst of the relentless duel, as chaos roared around her like a tempest of clashing steel and fervid shouts, Rory felt a stirring deep within, a silent crescendo building to a climactic eruption. The world seemed to slow, every heartbeat pounding a thunderous rhythm in her ears, as the latent power that had long lain dormant began to surge forth. In that charged instant, her inner strength manifested in a dazzling spectacle of transformation. A silver flame, ethereal and incandescent, ignited from within her core. The flame was more than mere light. It was the physical embodiment of her defiant spirit, a radiant burst of energy that shimmered against the darkness like liquid stardust. It pulsed with a brilliance both mesmerizing and terrifying, as if the very essence of her struggles, sorrow, and resilience had coalesced into a single, unstoppable force. As the silver flame erupted, it burst through the confines of her once subdued aura, cascading outward in sweeping arcs that blazed with the intensity of a supernova. Every movement of the silver flame was imbued with raw emotion, a powerful synthesis of agony and hope, pain and exhilaration. With each flicker, the flames painted the battlefield in brilliant silver hues, transforming the grim tableau of combat into an awe-inspiring, almost otherworldly scene. The air around her crackled, with energy, charged with the promise of renewal and the fury of long-suppressed defiance. Onlookers, allies and foes alike, paused mid-strike, transfixed by the spectacle unfolding before them, as if witnessing the birth of a legend. In that breathtaking moment, the power of the silver flame surged through Rory like a tidal wave, washing away the debris of past rejection and igniting within her a fierce, unyielding resolve. Every muscle tightened, every sinew pulsed with newfound vigor, as her very being became a beacon of transformative strength. The silver radiance did not merely illuminate her form, it enveloped her entire presence, turning her into an emblem of rebellion and hope against the crushing weight of ancient tyranny. As the eruption of light intensified, the battle itself was irrevocably altered. The opponents, long confident in their brutal might, recoiled as the pulsating energy radiated from Rory. The clash of arms and the shouts of combat faded into a muted backdrop, overshadowed by the mesmerizing display of power that now dominated the field. In that moment, the dynamics of conflict shifted. Fear and awe mingled in the eyes of those who witnessed her transformation, and even Callum, standing at her side, gazed upon her with a mixture of incredulity and reverence. Every slash of her unleashed energy carved through the enemy ranks with supernatural precision, each burst of silvery light a declaration that the old order would no longer reign unchallenged. It was as though time itself bent around her, the traditional boundaries of the battlefield dissolving in the brilliance of her power. The silver flame was a force of nature, a wild, incandescent expression of everything Rory had long suppressed. Her pain, her longing for acceptance, and her unquenchable desire to transform fate. In that climactic surge, the battlefield became a crucible of rebirth, where the scars of the past were incinerated by the transformative fire of her inner light. The intense glow of the silver flame bathed every combatant in its radiant glow, leaving an indelible imprint on the hearts and minds of all who beheld it. And as the light reached its zenith, enveloping the clearing in a luminous aura that promised both ruin and redemption, one question loomed in the charged air. With this awe-inspiring eruption of power, will Rory seize control of her destiny and herald a new era of liberation, or will the tides of ancient enmity ultimately try to snuff out the brilliant spark that now defined her very soul? The final stand and sacrifice. The air trembled with a heavy expectancy as the enemy leader emerged from the encroaching darkness, a towering figure whose very presence radiated cold authority and unyielding malice. The murmurs of the approaching foe subsided into a suffocating silence. All eyes in the clearing turned toward him as he stepped forward, his gait measured and deliberate, each movement an echo of ancient tyranny that had haunted their world for far too long. Callum's grip tightened on Rory's hand as the enemy leader's gaze swept over the gathered warriors, a gauntlet thrown down in a final, uncompromising challenge. His voice, low and deliberate, cut through the charged air like a dirge. "You have dared defy destiny, girl of the silver flame. Now, you face the reckoning for your insolence." His words dripped with disdain, yet beneath that veneer lay a grudging respect for the spark of rebellion she represented. For a moment, time seemed to pause. Rory felt every heartbeat pulsate with the gravity of this critical confrontation. The stakes were clear. This was the ultimate test, a collision of love, courage, and unyielding defiance. The enemy leader's challenge was not merely an attack on their physical existence, but a demand that she surrender the very power that had ignited her journey. In that charged instant, the weight of all her past rejections and solitary battles converged into one resolute moment of truth. With a voice that trembled yet grew steadily stronger, Rory stepped forward into the glaring light of destiny. "I will not cower," she declared, her words resonating with the raw clarity of one who has been forged in the crucible of pain and victory alike. "I am not defined by a past of isolation and scorn. I am the flame that will transform the darkness into hope." Her declaration, both a rallying cry and an act of defiance, sent a palpable ripple through the assembled warriors, uniting them in a moment of shared purpose. Callum's eyes shone with pride and fierce determination as he joined her, their resolve merging into an unbreakable bond. Together, they stood at the threshold of this final stand, fully aware that sacrifice was inevitable. Every muscle in Rory's body trembled with the surge of defiant energy, as if the very air around her vibrated with the promise of a future that she now claimed as her own. The silver flame within her, long a symbol of her hidden potential, roared into brilliant life, a beacon of transformation in a world of lingering gloom. The enemy leader's challenge echoed as a bitter counterpoint against their united defiance. His weapon, poised and deadly, seemed to glisten with the frozen wrath of centuries-old hatred, a stark reminder of the oppressive forces that sought to snuff out the spark of revolution. As he advanced, every step measured and ominous, Rory felt the full burden of the moment. The final test that demanded every ounce of her courage and every shard of her identity. In a breathless instant, as the enemy leader swung his blade in a calculated, decisive arc aimed at extinguishing her silvery light, Rory responded with a cry that reverberated like a battle hymn through the clearing. "I am not your sacrifice," she bellowed, her voice both a shattering proclamation and a rallying cry for all who had been oppressed by the old order. With that cry, the silver flame burst forth more brilliantly than ever, a blinding, uncontainable eruption of raw power and unyielding resolve that defied the chill of ancient enmity. For one endless moment, as sparks flew and steel clashed, the destiny of countless souls hung in the balance. The enemy leader's eyes widened in stunned recognition of the unbreakable will before him, a will that had grown impervious to the weight of rejection and the bitterness of isolation. In that charged battlefield of emotion and ideology, Rory declared her fate with the audacity of a true revolutionary, a testament to the power of love and unity forged in the crucible of sacrifice. And as the final clash of steel and spirit echoed across the clearing, a single question reverberated through the hearts of all who witnessed the stand. In this ultimate moment of defiance, could Rory's fearless heart and blazing silver flame finally shatter the oppressive chains of the past and illuminate the path to a new, unbound future? The dawning of a new era. In the aftermath of the clash, as the echoes of battle gradually subsided into a haunting silence, the enemy's once formidable power began to crumble under the weight of Rory's defiant roar and the indomitable, force of unity. The clearing, scarred by the fierce duel, now bore the solemn testimony of a revolution in its infancy, a fragile peace emerging from the storm of violence. The heavy air, once filled with the cacophony of clashing steel and fierce cries, now vibrated with the resonant echoes of Rory's bold proclamation, "I am not your sacrifice." Her words rippled like a clarion call throughout the land, a promise that the ancient tyranny could be vanquished by the light of a resilient spirit. In the distance, the enemy ranks faltered, their rigid formations dissipating into scattered groups, as the walls of their old order crumbled like brittle ice under relentless pressure. The thunderous roar of the battle had given way to a profound, contemplative stillness, a moment when hope was palpable, yet uncertainty lingered like the afterglow of a dying ember. Each fallen adversary, each splintered piece of shattered armor, seemed to whisper of a future that was finally within reach. Amid this tender hush, Callum's comforting presence stood as a steadfast pillar of strength. His eyes, steadfast and determined, met Rory's with a tender assurance that spoke of unyielding support. Together, they moved slowly among the remnants of the battlefield, their steps measured and purposeful as they surveyed the scene of both victory and the scars of war. The chaos of the earlier conflict had given way to a raw, quiet intensity, where every breath, every heartbeat, was laden with the promise of renewal. Callum's hand found Rory's, intertwining in a silent vow that united them in this transformative moment, a promise that their shared revolution, born of love and fierce defiance, would pave the way to a future unbound by the chains of the Old Order. Around them, the devastated landscape began to stir with signs of life. The scorched earth, tempered by the cooling night, gradually yielded to nature's tender resilience. Tender shoots of green emerged amidst the charred remnants, and the soft murmur of wind through shattered branches carried echoes of a new beginning. As if heralding the rebirth of the land, a delicate luminescence crept over the horizon, a gentle golden light that hinted at the dawn of a new era, where the oppressive night would be replaced by the brilliance of day. Yet, even in this burgeoning light, a myriad of questions lingered in the cool air. The victory, though undeniable, was fragile, a transient truce in the endless struggle between the forces of oppression and the yearning for liberation. What price had been paid for this defiant stand, and what remnants of the old order still lurked in the unseen corners of the realm? Had the revolution truly severed the deep-rooted ties of tradition, or was this luminous dawn merely a prelude to darker trials ahead? Rory, gazing across the horizon where the light of hope met the lingering shadows, felt a stirring of both relief and apprehension. Every ripple in the gentle breeze seemed to carry whispers of past sacrifices and future challenges. Yet, amid the uncertainty, her spirit burned brighter than ever, an unquenchable silver flame that symbolized not only defiance, but the promise of transformation. Callum squeezed her hand in a silent gesture of solidarity, his gaze conveying an unspoken commitment. Together, they would navigate these uncharted waters, uphold the revolution ignited by their combined strength, and stand resolute as they forged a new destiny. And so, as the embers of battle cooled into the soft hues of dawn, the land listened intently to the murmuring promise of change. Though hope shimmered on the horizon, the stirring question remained. In the fragile silence of victory, can the seeds of rebellion truly blossom into an enduring revolution? Or will the echoes of ancient oppression find a way to rise again? Epilogue: The Unwritten Future. In the gentle hush that followed the clamor of battle, as the first golden rays of dawn painted the sky with promise, Rory and Callum found themselves standing on the precipice of a transformed world. The journey that had led them from despair to defiant rebellion had not only altered the landscape around them, but it had also kindled an inner fire that burned with relentless purpose in Rory's silver flame. Every trial they had faced, from the fury of the storm to the fiery duels and the heart-wrenching sacrifices, had converged to shape a destiny that was uniquely theirs, a destiny now open to endless possibility. Rory looked out across the horizon, where the remnants of conflict melded with budding life, and she could feel the echo of each step, every pang of loss, and every spark of hope that had carried her through the darkness. The memories of isolation and rejection that once defined her had been transformed by the incandescent strength of her inner light, a force that now resonated with the unified cry of a revolution born not only of defiance, but of compassion, unity, and love. With every heartbeat, she felt the weight and worth of the journey, a mosaic of scars and triumphs that now painted the canvas of her future. Beside her, Callum's steady gaze offered a silent vow of solidarity. Together, they had not only challenged the oppressive forces of an ancient order, but had also ignited a beacon for those still yearning to break free from the chains of the past. In the quiet aftermath, the battered clearing and the soft murmurs of a healing earth bore witness to a new era in its tender infancy. The enemy's power had crumbled, and the cacophony of dissent had been replaced by the gentle, persistent pulse of hope, a pulse that promised that even the deepest wounds might one day mend, giving way to a landscape of renewal and possibility. Yet, as the light of a nascent dawn spread across the land, a reflective silence settled over them. The cost of freedom, they knew, was measured in moments of heartache and loss, each one a reminder of the sacrifices required to reclaim one's destiny. But it was also a price that made every victory, every spark of rebellion, all the more poignant, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit when it dares to envision a world reborn. In the radiant silence of that moment, amid the soft rustle of leaves and the distant call of a waking world, Rory's silver flame shone brighter than ever. It was no longer a secret ember hidden away in the depths of sorrow. It was now a blazing standard of potential, an indomitable light that beckoned all who suffered to rise and reimagine a destiny of their own making. The path ahead remained unwritten, swirling with uncertainty and promise. A future where every heart could choose its rhythm, every soul its own redemption. As they set forth together toward the promise of a new horizon, the air was thick with contemplation. The cost of their struggle had been steep, but the promise of endless possibility made it a price worth paying. In that evocative moment, with the first blush of a new era dawning and the quiet energy of a revolution pulsing beneath their feet, the legacy of their journey lingered like a timeless refrain. And so, as the light grew and hope unfolded its delicate wings, one resounding truth remained. In the unwritten future, every heart holds the power to ignite a spark that may one day set the world ablaze.